Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Hey, we want to welcome you guys to our show all the way from a split location today. Pastor Andrew in good old Crown Point, Indiana, and I am out in San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo and some good Southwest food. But we're out here for the NRP National Conference. We're celebrating our students who graduated from our NRP School of Ministry. That's going to happen tonight, and then the conference kicks off. And so for about the next 3 days, we're going to be with some people that we love and getting some good impartation and encouragement. So it's going to be a good time. But hey, we wanted to make sure that the podcast continued to roll. And you can hear me all right on your end, Andrew?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about some important things today. The first major question that everybody is scratching their heads trying to answer is, what in the world happened to liberal, white, leftist women? They seem to have absolutely lost their mind. Let me give you a couple of proofs and point here. First of all, I don't know if you saw the article that came out this week by Hillary Clinton. Now, we've known that Hillary's been off the rails for a long time, but nevertheless, I bring her up as evidence part one here. She is evidently attacking evangelicals because we are no longer, in her mind, we're no longer empathic. We don't care anymore. We become, let me get the quote correctly here. We have become a MAGA faith that is mean and cruel and heartless. In fact, she, in this article, she likened Donald Preddy, the nurse who was tragically killed, as the Good Samaritan, a modern Good Samaritan. She also said that, interestingly enough, that we are waging war on Christian values, and she likened Donald Trump to several of the Roman emperors who did not have such good reputations. Did you happen to see that article?
I saw the headlines. I didn't read it. I mean, I read some of it. I didn't read it carefully.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it goes back to the whole toxic empathy thing that we tried to highlight, the difference between genuine biblical compassion and toxic empathy, which we'll get into in a moment. But this was the other one that kind of was a little scary to me. And we saw this happen when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Sometimes people in positions of leadership or positions where they're responsible for actually caring for other people, like nurses, hospital administrators, they were coming out with the most cruel and vicious and immoral kind of response to the tragedy. And it made you wonder, wow, if I'm in somebody's care and I'm wearing the wrong t-shirt or the wrong hat, what are they going to do to me? So this is Melinda Cook. She's a nurse, and she was suggesting that nurses should stab law enforcement officers with syringes that contained a paralyzing agent. She also said that they should date ICE agents so that they could discover where they were staying, and then they could poison their food. Now, this is a nurse. I don't know about you, but I would want to know what hospital she was working at and make sure that I would not have anybody, including my dog, ever go to that hospital. I mean, this is kind of sick behavior. This is nursing. This is caring for people. And it seems a bit hypocritical for those on the left that they actually want to kill you over your political views or whatever. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what's going on, but I think it's very interesting that Hillary Clinton is bringing up the religious aspect that we've been talking about for years on this podcast. Now, she's bringing it from the perspective that MAGA has become a religion, and I would say politics has largely become a religion as the nation has become more secularized. Everything become religious, and I would say the Democratic Party is the leading edge in cultic behavior and religious behavior. Look at what this lady's talking about. She's getting to the point as a nurse, she's violating the Hippocratic Oath, which I get it. She's a nurse, she's not a doctor, but in her mind, she thinks those are justifiable actions. And to me, that's cultic and religious behavior. That's non-empathetic behavior. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, you see people go on TikTok celebrating his death, not grieving and not saying, you know what, we've gone too far, the rhetoric's gone too far. Those are religious behavior you see in zealots and cults. So Hillary Clinton is kind of trying to, I feel like everyone trying to say the other team's more religious. And it's just affirming what you and I have been saying for a long time, which is all of this is largely religious by nature. It's who are you worshiping? So Hillary Clinton talking about that to me is very ironic. So.
Well, and also we've seen the hypocrisy, the gross hypocrisy, because in 2008, Hillary Clinton actually called for the deportation of illegal criminals, which is exactly what Donald Trump is doing right now. So it's amazing how selective their memory is when it comes to some of their policy positions. But nevertheless, this phenomenon has a name. They call it the AWFULS, AWFULS. It stands for affluent, white, female, urban liberals. And it seems to be, these are the folks we see out making fools out of themselves, yelling, screaming, driving their vehicles into police officers and so forth. But it kind of gets us back to, first of all, I guess, a mental health crisis. This phenomenon that we talked about, almost like a Trump derangement syndrome, is not a made-up kind of thing. This was a 2020 Pew Research finding. 56% of middle-aged white women were diagnosed with a mental health problem. They experienced less satisfaction with life. The highest usage of antidepressants in the nation are found among this group. And generally, they have a woke virus. They're angry, they're resentful, they're depressed. And I think for the purpose of this podcast, we get back to, well, why is this happening? And I think what we're really looking at is the attack of faith, the attack of family, the attack of marriage. A lot of these ladies have experienced none of that. And there's just a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness among that population. And again, we've seen this, correct? You look on TV, who's out there holding the signs? Who's out there yelling and screaming? The large group of those folks are the group that we're talking about here, the awful category, the affluent white female urban liberal. And again, I just think they're looking for a cause. I saw something else that was interesting. It was saying that, due to CRT, everybody, is an oppressor, and white women get hit twice as hard because, number one, they're called oppressors. Number two, they're white. And so you got to get rid of the fact, no, I'm a good white woman. So what do I do to get rid of my bad oppressor whiteness? I go out and I do things like they're doing today. They're going out, creating turmoil, creating violence, encouraging violence, and really looking for a cause out in the public arena. So anyway, I think that's interesting. What do you think about the kind of the connection between the breakdown of, biblical marriage and the family and child rearing, having godly marriages, and the behavior that we're seeing, today, I guess, among that population? Any opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I hate making like a white or black or Asian kind of thing, but I think the general principle I see is, when you have a lot of disposable income, you have a lot of time, you have a lot of resources, and there's a sense of, okay, I mean, every person needs meaning and purpose. And, a lot of women, not all, but a lot of women and men, their meaning and their purpose is their children, is taking care of their kids, taking care of their community. And when there is not that outlet, again, there's a yearning for a deeper meaning and deeper purpose, shall I say, a deeper thing to worship. And when that person you don't worship is Jesus Christ, there's all kind of causes for you to cling on to. And like I said, left could be a very cultic religion. And that's what I see. I see them getting hooked onto this cultic side, and they have a religious zeals to express themselves that way because they're looking for meaning and looking for a purpose like any person should. So in many ways, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Now, it's interesting because, again, a lot of this phenomenon of toxic empathy is coming from the female gender. And I think I can say safely, a woman's gift as she's created by God, and we see this across the board. Women tend to be more in touch with their emotions. They tend to be more empathetic, more compassionate in general. Men seem to be more task-oriented, right-brained, whatever, however we want to describe that. But what's happening now as we drum up this toxic empathy is we are stirring up people's emotions, and when emotions get stirred, there's not a lot of rational thought that happens. And so you get kind of knee-jerk reactions. And what we're seeing on the left, and we'll talk about this because I think it's working working very well. But we're seeing fear, not the rational kind of fear that you would find if you were in war or if you're being attacked by a wild animal, but it's kind of this imagined fear, abstract kind of threats, constructed enemies. It's an existential threat. They use all this kind of language. So it's not a real threat that's out there, but it's an emotionally generated, contrived threat. We see this from the Hollywood folks. And I feel like it's a strategy. We want to trigger this empathic kind of distress, and then we want to try to insert, public policy while people's judgment, is impaired. And we've watched this happen, when there's a national crisis, like maybe there's a murder, a mass shooting. The left, what they do is they create these little caricatures, almost like little martyrs. So whoever it was, like the Renee Good situation, we create a memorial for her. We're going to bring candles and we're going to bring all kinds of stuff. We're going to turn her into kind of like the George Floyd, we're going to turn them into martyrs, and we're going to make them the face of our new cause. And we're seeing this happen with a couple of these, again, tragic deaths that have taken place from these agitators. The end result, though, is I think what's, something we all need to be worried about, because you get emotionally driven policy. So take, for instance, you have the national shooting. The left automatically wants to remove every single person's gun, every law-abiding citizen's gun. We're going to get rid of the Second Amendment. You're going to have emotionally driven policy that's largely symbolic, and you're going to have a whole host of unintended consequences. And so, if we talk about the immigration thing, everybody would love for us just to be able to open our arms to the world. We love everybody. We're going to pay everybody's bills, open borders, everybody just come. And that while that sounds utopian and great on one level, that the unintended consequences of policy like that is just tragic, as we're witnessing. And so now we have, the Trump administration trying to clean up the mess. And the optics of it are not so good. But the unintended consequences of open borders have produced a whole host of problems that nobody seems to want to focus on right now. And again, that's, I think, toxic empathy. So talk about that a little bit, toxic empathy versus, biblical compassion. Like, how do we care about people and care about, their situation, and yet be able to step back from all that, and look at the larger policy problems that are going on here that need to be addressed, serious problems that they kind of need to be lifted out of the toxic empathy realm of emotions and, looked at objectively.
Yeah, I think this is where good policy and good decisions are made with empathy, but also with objectivity, with logic, thinking through the whole situation. I think that the knee-jerk reaction, like you said, the fear, the anger, all those are powerful motivators. We learn leadership, what drives people is not spreadsheet. What drives people to action is emotions. But that in extreme and used to manipulate people becomes very, very toxic for a nation, for a culture, for an organization. So the problem with just empathy and just emotions is you're not thinking through all the consequences. You're not thinking, wait, how does this perspective, this policy comes from first principles? So, I think I empathize with my kids when they, want to stay up late. I empathize with my kids if they want to do something that I didn't give them permission to. But that doesn't mean I give them permission to do that. I can empathize with their feelings, but still say, yeah, but still, I get why you want that, but you're not going to do it. And here's the reason why. Here's the reasons behind that. So empathy is a very, very powerful virtue. I completely agree. I think we need to exercise more empathy. But empathy is not an end in itself. Compassion, depends on how you define it, but a lot of people will define compassion as a combination of empathy and objectivity to say, I do care about how you feel, that's important, I can see your perspective. However, here are the facts, here's the truth, here's first principles that aligns with empathy in a way that makes sense for everybody, in a way that wins for everybody, in a way that sets the nation up for success in the long run, and not just right now we make some decision, everyone feels good, and the nation gets messed up in the future. I think that is a huge difference between someone just reacting and leaders who think ahead. we're thinking to the future. So
No, I think that's very well stated. It reminds me when grandma and grandpa come over, right? And you're
yeah,
telling your kids, hey, you only get one helping, and hey, you can only have one cookie. Cookies are good, but you can't eat 12 cookies. And then you have grandma and grandpa come over, like the doting, grandparents, and they're like, oh, no, 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 come here, baby. Grandma says you can have the whole plate. I feel like we're dealing. That's what toxic empathy does. It sucks you into this vortex of feel good. Everything's a crisis. If you don't agree with me, you're a person of bad moral character. Everything is urgent. It has to be done now. The word I was looking for is symbolic individuals. You create these little story figure people that represent your whole movement, which is a gross oversimplification of the issues at hand. And it sucks. Empathy pulls you down into the ditch with the person that you care for. Whereas I think compassion is such a much more biblical understanding. We're going to come alongside people. We're not going to get down in the ditch with them. We're going to remain objective, as you said. We're going to be level-headed. We're going to be rational. We're going to look beyond the situation at whatever, consequences could be coming. And we're going to make the grown-up parental decision, not the doting grandparent decision. We're going to do what's best for our children or what's best for our nation in this situation, and not have these knee-jerk responses. We're not going to surrender our judgment. What we're going to think about what's the trajectory of where we're headed if we continue in this policy. Which again, when you look at the whole immigration situation, illegal immigration, and you just pause for a moment, you realize we were on a crash course 4 years ago with the Biden policy of open borders. It was going to destroy our nation. I mean, anybody could figure out we're going to go bankrupt. We're inviting in all kinds of unvetted people. Our crimes was shooting up. Everything was getting destroyed in this nation. So it takes a grown-up to sit back and say, okay, yeah, this is unpleasant, some of the things that are taking place. And I do feel for certain situations, but something has to be done long-term or else our nation's, down the toilet, are literally destroyed.
the other thing I want to mention is, you mentioned the grandparents, the parent. I think that's a great analogy. In my family, it's me letting the kids stay up late and finish watching a basketball game. And my wife is like, okay, you did that, and you get the bone, you get the euphoria, you're the hero, right? But next day, when they're tired and when they're exhausted for school in the morning, I have to put up with that. And even that as a principle is when you're the enabler, you're the one who says, yeah, come and do that. You get the dopamine kick. You get the feel good. But are you there to clean up the mess also? 4 years ago or how many years ago, we're crying and the whole nation's uproar with this open border. And now we're trying to solve this immigration crisis, trying to reverse it. And everyone's quarterbacking from their armchair saying, oh, it should be this and this and this and this. And I get that perspective, but who's going to do the hard work in the morning when the kids are tired and says, hey, you guys stay up late last night. Now you got to suck it up and get to work, And someone's have to do the hard work. And again, I'm coming from a place of first principles. This is not about D and about ours. When there's a violation of a border like that, do we not think there are consequences? And who's going to do the hard work to do that? It's easy for us to say, well, it's so messy, it's so traumatic, it's making my news feed really, really dark. But again, this is the consequences of open borders. And now no one's talking about open borders and Biden and Harris who allowed that to happen, where we're saying, oh, those agents are terrible. I'm not saying those agents are perfect, but let's think about, is the dad who last night let the kids stay up late, it's originally his fault. So we got to objectively think through the whole situation. So I'm just agreeing with you.
So are you saying we shouldn't be listening to Grandma Hillary is what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying, let's use reason and logic. The nation was in uproar, open borders, right? So right now we're like, yeah, but we don't like how you're doing it. Okay, how would you like to do it then? How can it be done then? Especially when the states are having a sanctuary city policies and they're not using police to help you, and they're defying your order. I mean, how are you supposed to do this? Again, I think most people aren't thinking through that process. They're just thinking through emotion. They're thinking through all this emotional feel, like you're saying, this empathy. So.
Well, let's talk about, you kind of touched on this earlier, uh, protest as both performance and purpose, almost an artificial purpose. I saw one guy making a point that I thought was really, really good. He said that, all this drama, theatrics, is really for social media clicks and for mainstream media to have a field day on. It's all about optics. People are looking like they're so bold, so courageous, but they're doing it in environments that are known to be generally safe. For instance, if you and I decided to join the agitators up in Minneapolis, we could, put on our mask, and we could wear our camo, and we could hold our signs, we could flip our middle fingers off and tell them all where to go. And we could actually get within, about 6 inches of one of those ICE agents' face, and we could start screaming in their face every kind of obscenity in the book. And you and I both know those officers are trained to have incredible restraint. Now, if you spit in their face or do something, or you cross the line, or you push them, or you engage them physically, that's a whole different scenario. You're going to get body slammed, and you're probably going to get arrested. If you do other things, you might get shot, as we've seen. But my point is, these folks know exactly what the environmental boundaries are. They can run out there and do their protests and look really, like they're going to be brave and courageous martyrs for the cause. But at the end of the day, it's all show. And we've seen this. Whenever an ICE agent actually moves towards one of those people, they run like little girls. So this is not about courage and boldness. This is about a perfectly scripted performance in the bounds of what is known to be safe behavior. In other words, you can be an idiot and do whatever you want to do within the parameters of this box right here. But if you cross that line, then it's going to get serious. And so you got a lot of these people trying to find their purpose, maybe trying to be a hero for a cause, but it's largely fake, it's largely scripted, it's largely performance, it's a lot of virtue signaling. But as you and I were talking about, and I want you to elaborate on this, especially in light of the most recent election, it's fake and it's performance, but it's very effective. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the election in Texas over this weekend, in which it was a special elections, and it was a very strong Trump district that the Republicans lost by, I think, 15 to 20 points. So if you look at the turnout, it's the cold weather, low turnout, special election. However, the Democrats came out. So my point in saying all that is to say those performances are actually very, very effective. Maybe not virtuous in itself because it's putting up a show. Again, I don't want to even judge their intent, but the point is, think about who owns the Hollywood. Hollywood is great at storytelling. Storytelling right now is right now that's the rage. People are activated by emotions. People are activated because they see a 3-second clip. People are activated because of talking points. They don't need substance in protest. They just need great clips. They need great videos. They need great storylines. And it gets etched in people's psyche. A 3-second meme or a still, a meme is more powerful than manifestos these days because people have no attention spans. So in many ways, their way of staging protests or staging those clips are amazingly compelling and powerful. And that's what gets people to move. And so what's our response to that? Well, I think we also need to be good at storytelling. But again, even in storytelling, for people like myself, like I don't even want to be in that realm. I want the truth to speak for itself. But that's not really how people work. People aren't motivated by the truth. They're motivated by emotions and what they see. So in that way, people like myself are always going to be at a disadvantage because I don't want to create the perfect clip to communicate that point and artificially. That's not my MO, but that's how people are wired, and it's very, very successful.
No, you brought out a good point. The author called it safe danger, confrontation without war, rebellion without revolution, controlled play, scripted reality TV, amplified rhetoric, And he said basically you don't solve any problems, but you just satisfy psychological needs. So that's from the perspective of the actual agitator. They feel better after this. But as you pointed out, the sad thing for those of us that actually care about substance, care about policy, care about long term, are disgusted with all the performance type stuff that we see. You still can't deny that it's incredibly effective, as you pointed out. A good story that touches the heart and engages the heart will go a lot farther than statistics and analysis and data. And I think the left is excellent at that. Like again, creating again the face of that person who's now become the martyr for the cause. They do a great job of pulling on the heartstrings, even though it's toxic empathy. There's no substance to it, and the end result's going to be 1,000 times worse than what they're actually advocating. The unintended consequences of that are going to be terrible. So guys like us, I know we get a little frustrated with what you watch the theater on TV, but I guess we just have to do a better job of communicating ourselves and storytelling ourselves. I was speaking of storytelling, a little shout out to our producer Matthew, who came out with an amazing story of the 2025 year in review for Living Stones. Did you happen to check that video out?
Yeah, I got to see it. It was great.
It moved me when I saw it. I needed that video. I came just at the right time. I was dealing with a touch of discouragement on a variety of issues, and I watched that video, and it inspired me to remember what God has done and to be excited about where we're headed. So I think that, again, just a shout out to the point that we're making, that images and stories and how we tell those stories can really move people to action. So either for good or for bad. So anyway,
Yeah.
where do you think we're going from here? The midterms are coming up. Do you think that what happened in Texas is any indication of a larger trend?
I think it is. Unfortunately, I think it is. I think I'm not a prognosticator of the future, but I think the Democrats are fired up. And the Republicans, especially those who are very empathetic, which again, it's a virtue to be empathetic, I'm not knocking that, are hesitant because of what they have seen. I think the very objective people who can kind of think through all these different issues are more just, nothing has really changed. Like, this is what we voted for, right? But there's just not many of that in America, especially in the middle. You really need to win the middle. But again, like, what do we expect? What's our expectation that, all of a sudden after Trump wins, everyone's going to, become conservative? No, that's not how this works. It's going to be a battle. The battle for the souls of the most powerful nation in America is going to be a raging battle. We already had casualties. We have casualties on both sides. We have Charlie Kirk being assassinated. I wonder, there are days like these when I'm like, man, I wonder what Charlie has to say about all these situations. I bet he's got a really good take, and I bet he's got strategy behind the scenes. TPUSA is instrumental in getting turnout and getting people to mail in their votes. Who's going to be in charge of that for the midterms? Who's going to be doing that? Who's going to mobilize? I don't know. What's Trump doing in the office? Is he paying attention to all these different things, or is he being distracted? So many things are outside of our control. And, my trust, and what I want to have my trust in, is surrender to the Lord. Whatever happens, I'm not entitled to everything going my way, and I'm okay with that. The United States belongs to the Lord, and it's in His hands. That's my perspective.
No, I'm with you. I was reminded this morning as I was thinking about this podcast of the prophet Isaiah when he said, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord raises up a standard against him. A lot of times we're looking at what's going on, and certainly we've identified that this is a spiritual battle for the soul of our nation. But the Lord reigns over it all. And sometimes when you look at trends or trajectories or whatever, you think, oh my gosh, if something radical doesn't happen, we're in trouble. And then God sends revival, or there's an event that's just cataclysmic and everything shifts. And so I'm grateful, as you just pointed out, that we serve an amazing King. He's Lord. He's moving history towards His completion and goal, and we get to be a part of that. So we'll continue to roll up our sleeves. I want to point out too, neither one of us is suggesting that politics is the solution to all of our problems in this nation, but we also have pointed out we would be absolutely naive to suggest that bad government is not one of our greatest enemies, and that we should be working hard to make sure we have great government and great leaders and leaders that share our values. So we don't want to make an idol out of politics. We also don't want to ignore it. We don't want to be depressed by the headlines, and yet we also don't want to ignore the headlines. We want to make sure that we are being proactive and coming up with solutions and being good citizens and godly citizens in seeing this nation return to the Lord. So I say a big amen to everything you just shared there. It's going to be an exciting 2026. We're off with a bang, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Amen. Amen to all that.
Well, your face didn't freeze one time on my side, so I don't know if my face has been frozen on your side, but we'll see how this works. Hopefully everybody could hear us today, and hopefully this will be coming out on Thursday. And gratefully, we don't have to do this very often. We'll be back in our studio next week, back to normal. So until then, thanks so much for joining us on this podcast. Give my love to everybody back in Crown Point.
Yeah, we'll do. All right. See you when you get back.
See you guys next week.